One of my favorite hymns is Open My Eyes That I May See. You're all familiar with it too, I know, because we sing it at Meeting for Worship every once in a while. And if I were more technologically savvy than I am, I would have found a version of it online and played it for you. But I'm afraid that might be a little beyond my technological ability at this point. So here are the words. Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Place in my hands the wonderful key that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my ears, that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear. And while the wave notes fall on my ear, everything false will disappear. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my ears, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my mouth, and let me bear gladly the warm truth everywhere. Open my heart, and let me prepare love with thy children, thus to share. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my heart, illumine me, Spirit divine. Those of you who were here the last time I led Meeting for Worship know that I am enjoying reading a devotional book written by my friend Don, who lives in Ramallah. Since he's lived there for nearly 50 years, or more than 50 years actually, he has been influenced by the Muslim faith of his neighbors. So in the devotional book, he quotes from various Muslim scriptures. In the reading I want to share today, he quotes from Essential Sufism, and this is the quote. When the eyes of the heart open, we can see the inner realities hidden behind the outer forms of this world. When the ears of the heart open, we can hear what is hidden behind words. We can hear truth. Then he goes on to say, every Monday evening without fail, the phone rings. It is always the same person. It is always the same conversation. The caller is a former colleague, a woman I worked with in 1965 when I was still a student in college. She and her sister are now quite reluctantly in a nursing home. And I will add parenthetically that the nursing home is, I think, in Jerusalem, which is about 10 miles from Ramallah, but it's quite an arduous trip to get between the two places. Every Monday, she makes the trip back to her former home, shops, and spends the night. Every Tuesday, I go across town and carry her 2 shopping bags to the bus, back to the nursing home. It is the same routine every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I argue with her that the trip is too long. The summer is too hot, and she needs to take care. She has been warned by the doctor that she should not make the trip. She is stubborn. She is obstinate. She is deaf to reason. When the eyes and ears of my heart are open, I can see the truth. She's lonely. She doesn't want to be in the nursing home. She sees her life as over and looks back with regret. She makes excuses to make these trips. The nuns are starving us. I have to come and buy food or we'll perish. I need to buy aspirin. I need to dust the furniture. I have tried to convince her to come once a month or even every 2 weeks to combine her errands. She needs to come every week. It is her life jacket as she treads water, drowning in the sea of old age and dependence and loneliness. She needs to call every Monday evening. She needs to hear that I will come on Tuesday afternoon, as I always do, and walk her to the bus. We need to learn to see with our hearts behind the facade that masks the inner reality. We need to become attuned to listening with the ears of our hearts to the meaning behind the words spoken. We have been schooled to act in a certain way, to say certain words, to veil our realities. We don't want to be exposed, for to be exposed makes us vulnerable. If we are vulnerable, we are presumed weak. If we are weak, we will be walked on and hurt. It is almost automatic to respond to "How are you?" with "Fine, couldn't be better," when the reality is far from fine, and when often the person asking is not really interested in how we are anyway. I like the Arabic response to the question, Alhamdulillah, which means praise God, or Nushkur Allah, which means we thank God. It recognizes no matter the situation or condition, God is aware, and we are not alone, and we are thankful, even though at times it is somewhat said with a sigh and a bit of resignation. I think in many ways, Allah opens our hearts to see and hear the truth and to respond with a hug, with a listening ear that doesn't criticize or blame, with understanding and tolerance, with sympathy and acceptance, with reassurance that this too will pass, and perhaps with the most important gift of all, time. Time to see, time to listen, time that lets the other person know he or she is not alone. Today, I pray that my heart will be open to see the inner reality and to hear the truth behind the words. Don's words really hit home to me. How often do I forget to listen and see with my heart rather than with my ears and eyes? Now, I must caution that learning to listen with our hearts does not mean needing to absorb the emotions of the other person, the anger, loneliness, or depression. That is not necessary, nor is it helpful. But we can offer our caring concern and affirm and acknowledge the feelings of the other person. And then we can share God's love with each person we meet. As we go about our lives this week, may our eyes, ears, and hearts be open to the needs of people around us so that we can share God's immense love with those who need it most.
Lynn was sharing, I was thinking about one of my favorite Quaker stories, John Woolman, when he visits the Native Americans out in western Pennsylvania, and he can't speak their language, and he's traveling with some Moravians who can translate, but he got up to pray and asked that they not translate, that if the words he said were to be helpful, that they'd be understood. And indeed, a Native American chief came up to him and placed his hand on Woolman's heart and said something which was translated as, "I love to feel where the words come from." I was thinking about that when Lynn was speaking, and also in something that I saw on the news this morning, which challenged me. But there were two different groups of protesters, obviously on different sides, and they're all shouting at each other. And it was obvious they were not loving to hear where the words came from, or even trying to hear where the words come from. And I think in my own case, in these contentious times, do I take time, and Lynn reminded me to, in her words, do I really take time to listen to what's behind those words that are being shouted? The anger is easy to hear, but what about the hurt, the care, the concern, the things that brought those people there? Regardless of which side, there's obviously deep emotion there, and probably things that we could connect to if we could learn to listen and love where the words come from, to see that of God in the other person. And in the midst of heat, that's often hard for me to do. I'm busy framing my just brilliant rebuttal or whatever, instead of really listening. So lately I've been trying to ask people, especially when I know they're a person of faith, is, so what, how do you arrive at that as part of your faith journey? I want to help me understand, not so I can criticize, just help me understand. I have a lot to learn. And so can we learn to love where the words come from, regardless of whether they're words we want to hear, like the Native American chief, or if they're words that are going to be really hard to hear?
Much like the woman in Lynn's story this morning, I am guilty of being in what I rather call a pattern rather than a rut. Get up every morning. Lynn and I have breakfast. I brush my teeth. I get in my pickup truck and go feed the cows. Now, some people have said, well, hey, you've got other people, younger people that could do that for you. Why don't you let them do it? But what I've tried to explain to them is feeding the cows, and maybe Dave can remember this, his days of working with cows. There's something very soothing about cattle in a pasture, calves running around, spotting the occasional coyote, the occasional turkey, a doe and her fawn. It's almost like it's a religious experience for me. Some people like to sit in their easy chair and read a devotional or read the Bible. But for me, being outside, when it's cold, when it's hot, when it rains, when it snows, and those occasional days in Indiana when it's perfect, like it has been the last couple of days, going and feeding the cows is a good experience for me. Now, I want to explain to you that I'm not totally in a rut. Yesterday, grandson Dale, who is 16, wanted to move his cows and calves to a different pasture, and so I volunteered to help. Now, in the past, we would have driven my pickup truck. I would have hooked it up to the trailer. Dale would have ridden with me, gotten out and opened and closed the gates. I would have gotten in with the cows and calves and been the one to separate them out and drive them up into the cattle trailer. Yesterday, we used Dale's truck. He hooked it up to the trailer. I rode with him. I got out, opened the gate. Dale backed the trailer up to the chute, got in, separated the cows, and drove them up in the trailer. So you can see that in my 75 years, I have learned a few things and have been able to pass them on to someone else. So I hope Lynn will forgive me leaving her every morning and going to see, as she calls them, my bovine girlfriends at the cow pasture. And I hope you are able to change in big ways or small ways as you go through your life and your religious experience.
are at the end of our time. Thank you, Lynn, for leading worship. And it was good to see everyone. Does anybody have anything to share before we sign off?
It's really good to see everybody. And that Dan is home now.
Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. As Quakers, I imagine most of us are going to have some labor in it.
Well, take care, everyone. And we will see you next Sunday, hopefully. And have a blessed week.